What's good, internet? Jake here, dumb as ever, and Bionicle was my life when I was a kid. I often discuss stuff like Transformers and Digimon on this channel, but Bionicle was another super important franchise to me growing up. I missed the first few years of Bionicle, and I really only got into it when I got Toa Vakama and Bionicle The Legend of Metru DVD for my birthday. Though I would go back and watch The Mask of Light like 100 times. Takua! From that point on, I became a massive Bionicle fan. And as I got older and got my grubby little hands on the internet, I became even more enamored with Bionicle. I would check a fan site called BZ Power every day after school. I really can't properly express how deeply nostalgic it is to look at this webpage. And to take the nostalgia even further, when I first discovered YouTube and made my own videos, I made a series called Chibionicles, where I shortened all of my Bionicle's limbs to make them chibi, duh. And I would essentially just play with them in front of my mom's digital camera, making up storylines and lore basically on the spot. You know, real content. That is literally how I started YouTube, which is so crazy to think about. And sadly, I deleted my YouTube account years and years ago, so I don't have any of that footage. Fully lost media moment. The only traces of my old account is this joint YouTube channel I made with an online friend, where I made SpongeBob stick figure animations that were just way too violent.
Haha, stupid sponge. I'm gonna use the sponge claws for myself. Wait, Patrick, no! Sponge claws doesn't work with other sea creatures. Digestive tract!
Sorry, I got way off track there. Besides the movies, there was a plethora of online Bionicle content to watch, from comic books to flash animations and games, as well as promotional material featuring the different characters. So besides pure nostalgia bait, what's the point of this video? Well, lately I've been thinking about Bionicle's commercials. While the movies told the story of these toy lines, it really felt like the commercials let you peek into the world of the toys, as if it was a real world that they were able to access and film, whereas the movies felt like retellings or a translation based on the events. I feel like that's a low-key insane way to think about this stuff, but it's just how I've always felt. And there are several Bionicle commercial animations that are more important to me than the actual films. So I wanted to go through the eras of Bionicle commercials and talk about them. Is this just an excuse for me to talk about some toy commercials I'm extremely nostalgic for? Yes. If that's alright with you, let's equip our Kanohi masks and start nerding out. And while you're here, maybe consider liking and subscribing. It ain't extra. The thing Bionicle really nailed in its early days were the vibes. The entire concept just felt so unique and realized, introducing us into its world as our heroes, the Toa, wash upon the shores of Matanui, and the commercials slowly brought you there along with them. The narrator has a David Attenborough vibe that makes it feel like you're watching a documentary, as if LEGO had transported a camera crew to the island of Matanui.
6 mighty Toa must rise against evil. To succeed, they must join forces and find the Kanoi masks of power.
The original commercial is very iconic, mixing animations of the Toa with live-action shots featuring the actual toys. What's cool is that the animations in the commercial actually have longer, very atmospheric versions. These have no narration and feature the Toa in action scenes, overcoming natural obstacles rather than enemies. Despite not really having any story elements, these short animations are striking, painting pictures of the Toa personality-wise. Gali is determined, scaling a rain-soaked mountain. Tahu is courageous, surfing through an active volcano. And Pohatu is just a fun-loving dude. He's not even really doing anything other than kicking his rock and moonwalking. The Toa's first enemies were the Rahi, which are wild animals, though these Rahi in particular were under the control of the Makuta, the overarching villain of the whole series. This commercial featuring the Rahi and the Rahi themselves are not super iconic to me. They're cool sets, but I think most fans agree they were overshadowed by the Bohrok, a set of monsters to match the Toa, with each Bohrok representing an element just like our heroes. The trailer again features animation and toy shots. I love the shot of the Krana taking over Tahu's face. So creepy and weird. I also love the Bohrok's tagline.
Beware, if you wake one, you wake them all.
Like, yes, these things are a threat, and the commercial sells that to us. Sadly, the later sets of the line, the Exo Toa and the Bohrok, did not get commercials. I'm sure they would have been epic. Instead, we skipped right into the introduction of the Toa Nuva. While I wouldn't really get into Bionicle until Metru Nui, I still remembered these iconic commercials of the Toa Nuva rising from the protodermis. Like the original set of Toa toys, the Nuva figures had individual animations, mostly featuring the different Toa doing some extreme sports with their dual-purpose weapons. I love the way Gali swims away in this animation, it looks really funny. And Pohatu's crawling all over the walls like a freaky spider. Liwa flying with his two swords is so iconic to me. I feel like those specific sword pieces were used so much, and I'm almost nostalgic for those pieces in particular. The commercial's toy shots featuring the Toa being armored up into this new form is fun. It's interesting to me how the actual look of the Toa is so different, but it just worked and they still felt like themselves. The next release was the Bohrok Call, repaints of the original Bohrok figures. The commercial and animation for these guys were neat, but feels like a filler wave before the big sets later in that year. The next wave of products tied in with the Mask of Light movie, featuring an expanded line of characters and products. But most importantly, it introduced the new villains of the series, the Rahkshi. These children of Makuta were merciless hunters, tasked with retrieving the Mask of Light. The commercial has what I can only describe as a tribal tattoo vibe. Like, these guys were meant to be scary and edgy, even though they really aren't. And they can even be a bit dorky the way they fly around. But don't get me wrong, I love their vibe. And the Rahkshi were hella scary in the movie. Also, there was this animation of a Rahkshi playing its staff as a guitar, which I loved as a kid. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. There was also a commercial featuring Takanuva and Makuta, something to show off the big sets of that year, and also something to cap off what I would consider the first main arc of Bionicle. The series went through several soft reboots. The narrative threads remained throughout if you were paying attention, but LEGO didn't want the series to be too confusing for new fans as the years went on. So every couple of years would introduce a new access point with new heroes and villains. After the Mask of Light, we would go back in time to before Matanui and explore the futuristic city of Metru Nui. God, I love Metru Nui. As I've said already, this era is where I really tapped into Bionicle. I got Toa Vakama and the Legend of Metru Nui DVD for my birthday, and I vividly remember wanting to just go watch the movie and ignore my party after opening it. The commercial for these toys is just so iconic to me. I love the darker, more serious colors with their bright eyes popping through the mask. The animations of the Toa Metru are just incredible. Everything is bigger and scarier than Matanui, but the Toa of this time are prepared for these challenges. Vakama's commercial has to be my favorite. He's probably my favorite Toa in general, based purely on nostalgia, though he was the only Toa to have a Kanoka disc launcher as a weapon, which is a gimmick I really liked, and it would mark the beginning of every wave featuring a special new weapon gimmick. Vakama's animation is also the only one that hints at a story involving an evil plant monster. The story arc was contained into the books and comic books, and this commercial is the only reference for fans not consuming that material. I also loved Matau's commercial, flying through the city of Metru Nui while also using the protodermis chutes to move around with ease and grace. It would have been so cool if there was an open world game to explore Metru Nui. The vibes would be continued with the release of the Vaki, the villain sets of 2004. These mechanized police robots act more like horror movie monsters, kidnapping Matoran under the orders of Taraga Dume, who was actually the Makuta in disguise. It doesn't seem like the Vaki had individual animations this time, but there was a commercial featuring mostly animations, which is very cool. I love the narrator's lines in the Vaki's commercials.
The Toa are their only hope, but hope is fragile.
There were some commercials featuring the Titans of this line, though they used movie animations, which makes sense for cross-promotion, I can't lie, but also makes these commercials actually feel like toy commercials, though the toy action shots are fun. 2005's line would introduce twisted mutant versions of the Toa Metru, now known as the Toa Hordika. The commercial is really good when it comes to displaying the toys themselves. I love the conceit that the Rotuka spinners can fly 50 feet through the air. Mine usually made it a couple feet away onto the floor. The animations were scaled back during this line, with the group of Toa sharing one animation instead of getting their own individual ones. Spider-like monsters called the Visorak would be the main enemies of the Hordika. walking on thin green webs watching over their captive Matoran. These guys are some of my least favorite villain sets. They're just really plain and samey, which I guess you could say for most of the enemies up to this point, but I don't know, the other ones had more charm to me. I do really like the physical set they used for them though. The shot of the green Visorak standing on the webs is really cool. The Titans of this year also got a commercial. No animation sadly, but we did get really cool toy footage. I didn't have many Hordika or Visorak, but I did somehow end up with the 3 Titans of this year. I love Kitangu, and I always thought Sidorak had a cool villain design with his giant blade arm. There were also a few more commercials. Bionicle was really hitting its stride, and the line kept expanding. The Bionicle Special Edition sets got a commercial featuring Toa Iruni and Toa Norik as statues come to life. I had these as a kid and didn't really know who they were. Though looking it up, I've discovered that they're actually the ugly little guys from the Web of Shadows line. It only took me 20 years to figure that one out. There were also proper LEGO playsets based on Bionicle this year. As a kid, I found the mere thought of these things offensive for some reason, though I definitely had at least one set because I had some of the Toa minifigures, and I also had several of the little Visorak. In 2006, another soft reboot for Bionicle would happen, taking us to a dangerous new island called Voya Nui. Here we would meet the imposter Toa called Piraka, who take over the island while looking for the Mask of Life, the major MacGuffin of this story arc. The Piraka were vicious-looking Bionicles with giant teeth and rubber spines. While the Metru Nui arc ignited my love for the franchise, this era of Bionicle is my real sweet spot. And I was getting the monthly LEGO magazine that started to include issues of Bionicle Ignition, the comic book chronicling this era's story. I read the hell out of these comics, especially the first issue. I read that one like 100 times. It was so beat up. But moving back to the Piraka, LEGO was clearly trying to target a younger generation with these characters. They wanted kids who were into rap and the internet to look at Bionicle and say hell yeah. The Piraka were sold as the Bionicle equivalent of gangsters, teaming up to bully helpless Matoran, but also always plotting to stab each other in the back. The commercial for them oozed attitude, with a younger voice narrating instead of the traditional old British guy.
Be warned, the gang is on the loose. You can make their eyes splash and their teeth glow in the dark.
The Piraka weren't heroes. They flexed in the mirror and relaxed on the couch. And with the Piraka returned individual animations, which I was glad to see. Each of them showing the Piraka getting up to hijinks while chilling in their base. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the infamous Piraka rap, a song created for the commercials which features an unknown artist rapping about, well, the frickin' Piraka. I kind of love the chorus. And of course, the term Yo-Yo Piraka has become infamous in the fandom. I honestly don't know if this radical approach worked that well, but for me, the unique designs and advertising actually worked. I was completely into the Piraka, and I was so ready for the heroes of Voya Nui, the Toa Inika. The Toa Inika were kind of weird looking with organic style masks, and they had a bit of that punk attitude that the Piraka had as well. But these Toa were absolutely iconic, and what was even more iconic was the music selection. Move Along by the All-American Rejects became my song of the summer thanks to that commercial, which featured the Inika fighting into the Piraka's headquarters. There was also an ad campaign called Free the Band, which involved the All-American Rejects themselves being kidnapped by the Piraka, with several commercials covering the campaign. There was actually a final commercial announcing that the band had been saved by the Toa Inika.
Thanks, Inika!
But let's take a break from the commercials for a second and talk about Bionicle and music a bit more. We've already covered 2 classics, the Piraka rap and Move Along, but there were several songs before and after those that influenced my childhood music taste. The 2 earliest songs for Bionicle that I know of were written and performed by the All Insane Kids, which was a band formed specifically for making these songs for LEGO, at least as far as I can tell. Hero by the band is iconic to a lot of us older fans. It's a simple song about making the right choices in life. The song is definitely aimed at a younger demographic with lyrics like, Their second song, Caught in a Dream, tied into the Web of Shadows movie, and I much prefer this song. It's more interesting to me lyrically. I love how he says boo in the chorus. It's corny, but in a really fun way, and I just feel like the chorus is super catchy. After the All-American Rejects, a new project was formed with the express intent on making music for LEGO. This project would eventually become known as Cryoshell, and they would make music tied to Bionicle projects until LEGO ended the line. I would describe Cryoshell as an alt-rock band that felt like a bit of an Evanescence clone, though they very much found their own identity later on. The song Crashed by Daughtry was used in some of the 2007 commercials for some reason. It was just a random song from Daughtry's debut album. While most songs tied to Bionicle had a heroic slant, or at least fit within the context of the story, Crashed seemed to be about someone addicted to drugs crashing and being saved from the brink of death. It's kinda random, but it's a good song, I can't lie. What's weird is there was also a Cryoshell song associated with the same line of figures. So I really don't know why Crashed made it in there. Maybe there was a LEGO executive that was a big Daughtry fan or something. Do the kids even know Daughtry? I barely know Daughtry. I'll touch on some of the Cryoshell songs as we continue through the commercials, but if you're interested in my full thoughts on all the songs in detail, I did a members exclusive bonus video where I ranked all of the Bionicle songs. It's totally not biased at all, by the way. You can become a YouTube member or a Patreon patron for just $1. Not only do you get exclusive bonus videos like that tier list, but you also get an invite to my super chill Discord server. Alright, ad over, let's move on. After the Toa Inika, we would also get a commercial for the 2006 Titan sets. Piraka is such a cool villain. I love that he's evil but rocks a heroic blue and gold color scheme. And Vezon and Pharak was a set I had and absolutely adored. Nothing cooler to me than a Piraka riding a giant spider monster. We also got another LEGO playset commercial, this time featuring the Piraka Stronghold. But now it's time to talk about my absolute favorite year of Bionicle. 2007, which is the year of Mahri Nui, a sunken island located next to the Pit, an underwater prison for the Barraki. I loved the Barraki. In years prior, every villain set had been pretty uniform, with each character only having small differences like masks and weapons. The Barraki were different though, with every character having a completely unique look and build. The commercial introducing the Barraki was so good, but the actual animation was pure cinema. It featured a Matoran named Dekar who finds the Mask of Life, which had floated to the bottom of the ocean, but soon the Barraki emerged from the shadows, all of them drawn to the powerful mask. The commercial follows Dekar through the depths, until he's eventually dragged into the abyss by Kalma. God, I love this animation so much. It's also tied in with the iconic Cryoshell song called Creeps of the Deep. They really hit the mark for me as the rapping and vocals reminded me of Linkin Park. The Barraki would be followed by new forms for the Toa Inika called the Toa Mahri. These sets also feature different builds for each character. The commercial is so cool to me because the screen fills up with water, covering the toys themselves, which just looks badass. The animation for these sets was incredible. It was super long and featured almost every set from that wave, including some incredibly cool Titans battling over the Mask of Life. I got insanely lucky this year and had almost every set from the line. I was only missing Nocturne, a Walmart exclusive Barraki, but I had every other Barraki, every Toa, every Titan, and thinking about how this is the same year as the first live-action Transformers movie and Transformers Animated, I'm starting to realize how insanely lucky I got as a kid in 2007. The Titans from this line were my absolute favorites. Maxilos and Spinax are some of the most badass looking Bionicles ever. And I love Hydraxon's lore, with the fact that Hydraxon is actually Dekar from the Barraki short, having been transformed by the Mask of Light. The next era of Bionicle would begin with the Phantoka line, which followed the Mahri line's footsteps with unique builds for all of the characters, but also introduced a new idea of doing 3 good guys and 3 bad guys, and also changed the setting to an open-air island called Karda Nui. This is kind of the era where I began to fall off with Bionicle. I think these sets are neat, but the setting and villains just didn't really do anything for me, and even reintroducing the Toa Nuva in new forms didn't interest me much. The Phantoka animation and commercial was fine, but a little lackluster compared to the previous ones for me anyway. The later sets of this year, called the Mistika, were a bit more interesting, mostly because the animation featured a lot of interesting lore moments. Like the Mistika finding these insanely cool vehicle sets. I had a few of these vehicles and I thought they were so sick. It was like combining Bionicle with the G.I. Joe. I also had the Toa Inika set, which featured the first proper version of the Mask of Life. And there was also a badass Titan version of Takanuva, who sadly never made it into a commercial or animation. The Mistika animation revealed a huge lore drop. Matanui was actually a giant robot, and the Matoran and other inhabitants of the planet lived inside it, cells at work style. Unfortunately, Makuta took over the robot, forcing Matanui to escape into space, landing on a nearby planet called Barra Magna, which is where the next and final era of Bionicle would take place. This new world was similar to the previous one, but there were no Toa. Only Glatorians, gladiators that would battle each other. And these guys didn't use masks, they had helmets. LEGO also added a little battling game which the commercial mainly focused on, though there was an animation reel which is nice, featuring some of the Glatorians showing off their moves. The Glatorians is where I fell off of Bionicle hard. I was really not feeling 2009's first wave, and I don't think I bought a single figure from it. The second 2009 wave did get me slightly more interested, but only because it featured Matanui for the first time in toy form. He actually had two toys, one of which was a Glatorian Legend set, which is basically the Toa of that era, and the other was a large Titan that was actually called Toa Matanui. I had both of these because duh, it's freaking Matanui. There was also a new movie that released with these toys, and I didn't really like it, to be honest. I think I had become less susceptible to bad movies. Sadly, they used footage from the movie in the commercials, so while the toy footage does look nice, we didn't get any badass animations this go around. Unfortunately, this would be the last proper year for Bionicle. The theme had had a long run, but interest had started to wane heavily, and the sales weren't justifying the costs anymore. Bionicle ended not with a bang, but a whimper, with a line called Bionicle Stars, which served as a send-off with the greatest hits roster of characters. I actually really liked this line as a kid. I had nearly all of them besides the Glatorian guys, though they were a bit lame due to their smaller Matoran-like size. The commercial was pretty good, giving this line the reverence it really deserved. And the commercial ended with an animation of Tahu getting all of the golden armor pieces. While this is a fairly short commercial, the Bionicle Stars also got a series of stop-motion animation shorts. Stop-motion was another one of my early YouTube loves, so seeing it combined with the Bionicle felt so right. The animations featured each hero fighting their respective villains, as well as an animation where Tahu powers up and defeats the hordes of enemies they were facing. And that's where Bionicle ended, at least in terms of commercials. There is a proper ending to the story, but I'm definitely not the guy to tell it. And the whole point of going through all these animations and commercials was kinda to look at the story from that point of view, seeing what Bionicle was to someone just watching TV over a decade. Like most people, I wish the toy line had a better send-off. But the series was undeniably an impressive feat of toy making and storytelling, and I'll likely always carry some of these stories with me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I have a YouTube membership and Patreon. For $1 a month, both give you the same thing. Access to exclusive members-only bonus videos, and an invite to my super chill Discord server. Alright y'all, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.